So, having said that,
Yeah, it's rip it, baby. All right, what should my training look like after THP? Oh, that is a trick question. It's impossible to tell you without coaching you. That's like asking like I can't even think of a good analogy or illustration for this. It's just an impossible question to answer. Once you're done working with us, it's there's a misconception about what you're trying to do. When you're getting coached by us, it is the assumption is that you're in it for long-term athletic development. So to say like, what do I do after I'm done? That's like asking me like, what am I supposed to do for the rest of my life? And you know what I mean? I can't possibly answer that because I'm not your coach anymore and I'm not looking at metrics and indices all the time. Like it's an ongoing living, breathing program that is always adjusting to you and your needs, your season, your goals, your weaknesses, your deficits, your strengths. It's always adjusting, right? Like Isaiah's program this week doesn't look like the same that it did in 2021 or whatever, right? Like it's always changing. And so I can't really answer that. If you're maybe the assumption you're making is that, oh, I do this THP program, my body forever changes, and I'm now a new organism, and I will never go back. And that's not how it works. It's fluid. As you train, you get adaptation. That adaptation can go away if you don't do anything, right? If you don't do the right stuff. And so it's important to keep stacking on top of those individual adaptations that you have, and so that you're progressing in the right direction over time. So yeah, it's difficult for me to say to answer that question. Say hypothetically there was a 5% body fat lifter who has huge lifts, e.g., 600-pound squat and 350-pound power clean. Say he only has a 28-inch max vertical jump. How would he train to jump higher? If this is you, John, that is a disgusting level of strength. Um, and then let me read the second question. How do guys who aren't strong or didn't lift get such high verticals? I have a hip injury and unsure exactly what it is. I'm getting an x-ray. It hurts. I have pain when squatting. Okay, there's a lot of questions here. All right, so the first one, I can't think of like too many examples of a case where that would happen. If you have a 350 pound power clean, like this is a hypothetical, right? So hypotheticals imply that it didn't actually happen. And so I would say he probably wouldn't have a 28-inch vertical. I would say if you're 5% body fat and you can squat 600 pounds, let's say he's a weightlifter, if he's because a powerlifting squat is not really the same. It's going to be very, very hip dominant. It's not necessarily high velocity. So we'll say it's a weightlifter. They're not going to have a 28-inch vertical. And if they do have a 28-inch vertical, it's probably because they don't know how to jump. And if you just teach them how to jump, their vertical is going to go up very, very quickly because their power outputs are insane. Second question, how do guys who aren't stronger and don't lift weights jump so high? Reps. Jumping is a skill. I've said this for a long time. Sprinting is a skill. It's kind of a similar question to how do guys that aren't super strong run super fast, right? Like you guys have probably seen Usain Bolt shittily clean 135 pounds, right? Or like do half-ass leg press and all this other stuff. How is he so fast whenever it's something that's predominantly dictated by force and force generation? And the question or the answer to that question is going to be the rate of force development. So it's not just how much weight can you lift, it's how fast can you lift that weight. So in the other example that you gave me, you were like, oh, he has a 350 pound power clean. If you're someone that doesn't have a 350-pound power clean, I would say, yeah, it's very common. Sometimes you'll see guys with a 25-inch vertical or 20-inch vertical with a 600-pound squat or a 1,000-pound squat. And the reason why is because the rate of force development is terrible. They can generate a lot of force, but they can't do it very quickly, right? You can imagine like a semi truck or some sort of tractor pulling a trailer that's super heavy, right? He might be able to pull a ton of weight, but it's not going to go very fast. And that's the major difference between those two things. So jumping is a stimulus. Jumping, sprinting, all of those things are the training. It's not just lifting weights. It's not just doing cleans. It's not just even plyos to a certain extent, right? You have to do the thing you want to get better at. Isaiah tried to dunk a medicine ball yesterday, right? And do like a trick dunk with a medicine ball. And you'd be like, oh, wow, that's got to be so good for dunking, right? It's got to help his, hands so much. And then he went back to trying to dunk a normal basketball and was absolutely terrible. It was so bad. And that's because it's a different motor pattern, right? It's different rate of force developments, it's slower. And you can imagine like imagine if I told you uh, to throw a wiffle ball super far, right? Or like a pebble. It'd be really, really hard to do that. But if I give you some weight to it, like a baseball, you're going to have an easier time throwing it. And that's because it's really hard to accelerate things that are already moving really, really fast or don't have a lot of weight to them. You have to have crazy high rate of force development, even if it is something like limb speed. And jumping is somewhat similar. So on the hip injury, yeah, I would get it's hard to say specifically where you're feeling the pain, if it's on the inside or outside, but it could be FAI. So what you want to do is ask about femoral acetabulum impingement and see kind of what they say. I would bet that that's probably related unless you fell on it or bruised it or something like that.
Yeah,
I
I didn't hurt it doing anything. I just woke up one morning and it hurts and it's on the inside. It seems like it's not
Probably
right
your
on.
labrum. It's probably your labrum. It was probably from like squatting too deep or something like that, or jumping and rotating your hip in a certain position. I would bet that if you unload it and stop squatting deep and stop avoiding like uh, provocating it or doing something provocative, it'll get better fairly quickly. I have the same thing on my inner, like right kind of at that crease in my thigh as it comes into my pelvis. That is where I get a ton of pain, and it's very, very sharp and pinchy and sore. And that happens whenever I'm loading my hip too much. So if I'm doing extreme ranges of motion in anything, if I'm forcing a position like squatting or sometimes the penultimate step, if I'm out of position, it can get really, really sore. In my most recent YouTube video, there's a point where I'm like doing a split squat and I ended up wrecking my hip. And I gave it like 3 or 4 days, and it bounced back and it was fine. So you can get an X-ray. They're probably going to tell you just ask about FAI. I'm assuming that's what it is. If I were a betting man, as a jumping athlete, that and when you have pain there, that's probably what it is. But see what they say.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep.
John,
Hey,
I
you
can
got.
get yeah, I can get
All
Harish.
right, cool.
So Harish, you said basically a back pain flare up. Uh Woke up on Friday with pain, skipped the session, skipped Saturday's lift. Might have been from Wednesday lift. We're sitting for long periods. You did McGill Big Three. You walked on Friday and Saturday. I don't feel the pain anymore. That's a good sign. Should my training be updated for the week or should I just continue with what I have? I skipped yesterday's workout just to be safe since I'm not sure what y'all would have wanted me to do. All right, so I pulled up some tabs here. This goes for anybody on the call. If you ever have an injury pop up, this is what I want you to do. It's really similar for multiple injuries. So the first thing is there's a section in school called injuries, and I want you to click your injury and watch the video and click the document. So I'm gonna go over the back pain document, and the reason why it's not just to just follow this and we're not gonna coach you. It's because it'll help us coach you better by doing this, and I'm gonna explain how. So the first thing it says, make sure your technique is cleared. So whatever lift caused you pain, I want you to send it to us and we're gonna help you make sure you do that lift in a way that's not going to hurt. Specifically with back pain, you want to be you want to have a braced neutral spine and you don't want movement at the spine. You want it to be locked basically when you're doing whatever lift you're doing. I know we recently had you squat deeper. I bet the culprit is deep back squatting, um, which goes to second, good posture throughout the day, which you should be doing already. The Go Big Three and the 15-minute walks you did already. Um, Now this is where the improvements are largely going to come from. So whatever is causing pain, we're going to follow these three guidelines. So we're either going to change the exercise or the range of motion. So, and then if that doesn't work, then we're going to cut intensity. And if that doesn't work, we're going to cut volume. So looking at your training, right? If the power clean is the thing that's hurting, the first adjustment I would make would be to, well, first, you should be pulling with a flat back. I know you have problems with that. If you're still not able to pull with a flat back from the floor, then we would elevate the surface. So we would do it from pads or from blocks. And then you basically raise the box up into a point where you can have a perfectly neutral spine. Um, and it's also better leveraged when you pull from a box. Now, if you still have back pain by doing that, then you would cut the intensity. So just use less weight, same sets and reps as seen. If that still hurts, then I want you to use less weight and less volume. So if it was a workout like here, 6x3 instead of 6x3, you could do, 4 sets of 2, something like that. If you don't know how to adjust something, and this goes for everybody in the call, it's, hey, power, hypothetically, if it's power cleans, hey, power cleans are bothering me. I have to do 7 sets of 1 on Monday. How should I adjust? And what I would say is pull from a block, don't go heavy, just do 4 sets or something like that. If that were to still bother you, then I would say cut it out completely. What you don't want to do, and this was the one mistake that you made, is you skip the training. You never want to skip the training. You always want to train, but you just want to do it in a way that it's not going to mess you up. The squats, how we would adjust the squats. If barbell back squat hurts, all right, we're gonna cut range of motion. If that still hurts, okay, we're gonna cut intensity and volume. If that still hurts, we're gonna find an alternative. The best alternatives for squatting would be front squat. If and go through the same process. If going deep hurts, cut the range of motion. If that still hurts, volume and intensity. And if that still hurts, then we will go to machine loading. Leg press, something like a leg press. Some people get issues with leg press. The alternative there would probably be a leg extension, would be the final adjustment that we would make. That would be the least provocative. Calf raises you can usually do with no pain. Um, some people are sensitive to compression, which is when you load your back up. That point, I would say to either hold a dumbbell or do seated calf raise instead. Barbell hip thrusts can be provocative if you're not using good technique. So that would be something I would send a video of. And then if that's still too provocative, I would just go to something that's machine loading that works the posterior chain. And then same, so you would just follow the same process for pin squat, power clean. This shouldn't hurt, this shouldn't hurt. And then looking at Saturday, uh again, follow the same process for hang power snatch. I would probably uh actually hang power snatch should be pretty good by this point. RDL is usually a technique thing if it hurts. Front squat, follow the same process. Calf raise shouldn't hurt. So your homework is to in the chat message us what lifts you think are going to be provocative, what sets and reps on what day you have it listed as, and we'll give you the alternatives.
So, hey coaches, attempted to PR clean last week. Hit a plateau, didn't go super well, had a bad jump session, kind of like, in a little bit of a learned helplessness mindset here. And that's part of the territory. And it just comes with the territory of long-term improvement. I want you to imagine how a world-class athlete feels when, they've been grinding all year and they come out at their opener and they run a worse time, right? You think about it, you've been training for 6 months. Someone like in Fabian's case, right? He's been training for 6 months, comes out to his first meet and only jumps, 220 when he's capable of jumping 235, right? So how you have to view it is you're putting hay in the barn, right? And when you want to perform well, you have to do certain things to allow that fitness to shine through. It's not something that just happens because you've been training hard. Because you've been training hard, your body has built up so much acute and chronic fatigue, meaning over time, you've blasted your body in the weight room, you've blasted it on the track, you've blasted it, and if you're cutting weight as well, you're metabolically absolutely fatigued as all get out. And to see your body perform at a high level, you're probably going to have to remove a lot of that training volume so that you're able to recover and allow your fitness to shine through. So we have this curve that's called the fitness fatigue curve. Right now, your fatigue is really, really high, and your fitness is probably also really, really high because they increase concurrently, meaning when you're training really hard, your fatigue is also going to climb up. So what we have to do is we have to drop your fatigue off and we have to allow your fitness to be the thing that's driving you to good performances. So if you want to do that, and I had this same problem in high school because I trained so hard, I oftentimes would come out and I'm like, why do I feel so flat? And that's because I was training hard. But that's also the thing that long term would make me a way better athlete. And the reason why, 6 months later, 4 months later, I would be jumping my absolute best of maybe my entire life at that time. or it was definitely my best at that time. So let me look at your training real quick here, and I can tell you, yeah, you I would not be expecting to like do phenomenally well after a cycle like last month. You're halfway through a macro cycle. So if you were to go back and look at how you felt in March, you probably felt really, really good, right? Because for 4 weeks, you were doing very minimal loading. You were basically at the end of a macro cycle. Your body's going to feel absolutely incredible, right? You did that for 6 weeks. You were able to just allow yourself to freshen up and allow all your performance to shine through. Now you're in the middle of one of the hardest macro cycles that I've ever written in my entire life, probably top two. And I would not expect you to feel fresh during these macro cycles, even after a deload week, because the fatigue you're accumulating is so significant that you can't expect, even though it's a deload, to just magically bounce back and feel better. So if you want to perform well and you want to feel better, then we can drop off all the volume and you'll feel great, right? We see this happen a lot of the time. Guys will hop off the service and they're like, my vertical increased 3 inches. And I'm like, yeah, because my job is to train you, not to undertrain you. Like, but if you want to perform well, we can allow you to do that. It's just that I mean, it's fine if you do this. I prefer to be a little bit in a fatigue hole and not jumping well. But if you want to bounce back and perform well, that's totally fine. I do it with Isaiah all the time before big competitions. He functions chronically in fatigue. I never really allow him out of a fatigue hole unless it's something important.
Curse you.
Um, yeah, I know. I really don't. Like I try to basically always keep him a little bit under his best. And for him, it's a little bit different, but for you, you're going to benefit more from just training and grinding through those bad sessions and seeing changes in your body composition, seeing changes in your squat, seeing changes in your clean progressively increase over time. If you're that fatigued, though, you might be under eating. So also keep that in mind. And I wouldn't expect your performance to increase in the weight room or output wise until you start to increase your carbohydrate intake. So, for example, like, if you're cutting, like if I'm cutting weight right now, right? I've gone from 190 all the way down. I weighed 181.5 or something today. And that's after like probably 70 days or so. So I'm not expected to feel super well while I'm cutting all this weight until I increase my carbohydrate intake when I'm already really light. That's whenever my metrics will go up. But in the weight room, I'm probably not going to be lifting as heavy unless my outputs are really, really high, which right now they're probably not. And specifically with power clean, with squat, they'd be pretty good. So yeah, keep that all in mind. Up and really the key is keep going. Keep going, and it's just part of the process. Ambrose, update with athletic pubalgia. I was able to do a 20-minute session, lower ab flare up, definitely progressing, doing Ben's exercises, thoughts on cutting the jump session. Um, I would not, okay, at this point you could. I think dunk camp is now like probably 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out. So you need to be doing more dunk sessions than plyos. Dunk sessions are going to be the thing that makes you better. I wouldn't let it get to the point where it's getting painful though. As long as you're taking care of your body composition and you're maintaining that specificity, I think you're going to be in a good position. I would not go to dunk camp expecting to have like 4 sessions that are an hour long. I would go into dunk camp expecting to like progress on, like see how much you can progress in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Like I said, doing the activity you want to improve on and removing the provocative stuff is going to be really helpful. If the thing you want to get better at is dunking, though, it's a little bit tricky. So you could try doing just plyos and subbing that in place of the dunk sessions, but it might be also provocative. So you're going to need to play around with that. That would be a good way to maintain performance, though. Form check, we'll look at that at the end. Richard, you guys talked about pre-contraction and 1 foot jumping and utilizing co-contraction of the agonist and antagonist. I imagine you want to replicate the same for the plant on 2 foot, correct? Yes. And this is what I was asking Isaiah prior to, well, this was a podcast like last week or something like that. We were at my house. It's basically the idea you cannot actively volitionally co-contract. And if you do, it will make you worse, right? Isaiah doesn't think about contracting his hamstring or his quad when he's mid-flight coming into the jump. That's
We
something
do
that
joke around
happens.
about it though.
We do. What's that?
I do joke around, joke
Yeah,
about
he's like, "Oh, dude, do I have to just pre-contract my quad more?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, you got to pre-contract your quad more. It's gonna help you jump way higher." So that's something that happens in not intuitively, subconsciously. It's something that you learn by doing it over and over and over again. And as you improve your performance, that is something that happens, right? It is a consequence of getting better as a jumper, not the reason you get better as a jumper. It's like I jumped higher, and as I jumped higher, my body progressively started to do this thing. And this thing happens because I tried to jump higher over and over and over again. So you're basically learning it in an autonomous sense of just doing the thing, and you're auto regulating, and your body's figuring out how you get the most out of that performance, and it's happening subconsciously. That's why we tell you guys that practicing jumping is so important. I would even argue that John or Isaiah right now is probably somewhat dysregulated when it comes to that specific quality because he hasn't been jumping maximally as much. He can hit
My
46,
body's feeling
47.
it today, man. The amount of soreness I am feeling today is more than I felt in like months.
Which is good. I love that. That's my favorite. So second, John, I recall you mentioning, I think Mike Young or one of your other mentors telling you about extensive plyos being able to develop tendon stiffness. Curious to hear more about that and the mechanics that you think can cause that rather than intensive ones. So it depends on how you're defining extensive versus intensive. In the case of Mike versus Boo versus Dan versus Verko Shansky, they're all going to be different. So extensive tempos and or extensive plyos in the case of Yuri is going to be very light bounding. It's going to be like alternate leg, alternate arm bounding for, probably like 70%, doing 80 to 100 meters at a time and not really having very high intensity at all. That's the biggest way he got extensive plyos into his training was doing that sort of thing. I don't even think he did hops. He might have done very light hops, but it was like A skips, even running, drills to a certain extent, and then extensive plyos. There really isn't much in the way of other things that were in the program. He probably still had sprinting and stuff like that in there as well, or running to some extent. And then intensive is doing that, but with higher intensity. So it's basically the same thing, but you're just upregulating how hard you're doing them. And it's not like shock loading. It's not like doing weighted jumps or anything like that. It is doing these bounding exercises, but with a little bit more intent. Sometimes I think he might have even done like a box jump kind of variant or something like that, or uphill bounds and things like that. But it's basically just intensifying what you were doing previously. It doesn't even matter specifically what you're doing, but between extensive and intensive, it just means whatever you're doing is getting more intense, right? However, you're doing that either by adding effort, decreasing the distance of the reps, like the total distance of the reps, increasing the intensity, increasing the rest periods. Those are how you're going to, and intent ultimately, that's how you're going to increase the intensity. Now, the reason why that extensive probably work better than intensive is because when you do intensive, your tendon is going to be a stiffer spring. It's going to be a stiffer force transducer. And as a result of that, you're not actually going to get the collagen fibrils deforming as much as you get the fascicles sliding past each other. So, and this is just a proposed mechanism. I don't even know if we fully understand this, but when you do very, very high volume, uh, very, very high volume contacts over and over and over again, we longitudinally see that these athletes have stiffer tendons and that they have more cross-sectional area of tendon tissue. But we also see on the other end that when you do a lot of resistance training, those athletes also have very, very stiff tendons and very, very high cross-sectional area. However, when you look at like a 12-week study, you won't actually see crazy adaptation in the tendon by doing plyos and really to any extent. But when you look at resistance training, you will see those adaptations. So really the difference lies kind of in the fact that we we know that tendons are better in athletes who do a lot of contacts with the ground. They have a lot of collisions with the ground. We know those athletes have better tendons, right? And they're better stretch shortening cycles. But in a 12-week study, you're probably not going to see that. You're definitely not going to see it the more elite the athlete is. But what we also know that acutely in a 12-week study that when we do resistance training, you do see tendon adaptation. And so it's the difference is basically that weight training is more potent for that. And even more so, the more intense the plyo, like you basically don't see any change in the tendon, like actual histology. You don't see any difference in the tissue. It's just that your performance goes up, your stretch shortening cycle gets better, your joint stiffness goes up, but the actual tissue itself doesn't really change from doing plyos. So
And
that's why doing
is it
what's that?
specifically heavy resistance training as well?
Honestly, it depends on the demographic. So if you're looking at like I mean hypertrophy research in an 8-week study with like moderately trained lifters, they'll still see tendon adaptation. If you're like even that is enough to see it. The more advanced you are, you're probably going to need more volume, and it's like a sliding scale. You're not going to see as much adaptation in someone who's way advanced and their tendons are super adapted, right? You're going to need really intense stimuli to get those tendons to adapt further. That's why whenever I'm doing those eccentric lowers where Isaiah's pushing my the weight down and I'm doing double leg calf raises, he has to do that because I'm 31 years old and I've been doing resistance training that would make my tendon stiffer for, let's say 15 to 20 years, right? So in my case, I need a really intense stimulus to really see much of an adaptation in the actual tendon. And now, if you're someone that's never trained, you're probably going to get crazy tendon adaptation from just doing like hypertrophy, right? You're probably going to get really good adaptation from just doing that. Now, when you're talking about like managing symptoms and stuff, it's a little bit different, but I'm not going to get too far into the weeds of tendinopathy or that sort of stuff right now. Okay, and the reason why intensive doesn't work is because the volume is too low. That's the biggest issue. It's just that there's not enough volume there, and you can't maintain that volume for a long enough time. Whereas you look at like a distance runner, they're doing 60 miles a week. They're getting that tens of thousands of contacts, you know what I mean, across the week, maybe even hundreds of thousands of contacts across the week. It probably is hundreds of thousands of contacts across the week. So you're gonna see tendon adaptation from that versus, you know, 100 depth jumps. It's just not enough volume and it's way too intense and the tendon functions in a different way when the intensity is that high. You're not really stressing the collagen fibrils as much. All right, personally, when I understand the mechanics and sciences of what's going on, I can apply cues, motor skills way easier. Same for people I've coached. I find that it helps a lot of no stones unturned philosophy. Wondering if you guys have athletes you train. Yes, the more intelligent someone is, the more they will respond to the why. The less intelligent someone is, the more they respond to treating them like an idiot. So like if someone's not like I've worked with at Altus when I was working with those guys, right? You'd get someone like Curtis Beach, who's incredibly high IQ, incredibly smart, very intellectual, has to know exactly why he's doing what he's doing, and will apply that to the event so that he can start to understand it better and will perform better as a result. And then on the other side of the equation, you get someone like Fabrice Lapierre, who's like an 840 long jumper, which is like 27 feet, shows or 28 feet, I don't even know, shows up, doesn't give a shit about the training, doesn't give a shit about why he's doing what he's doing, but he just says, "Oh yeah, right, mate. Yeah, I'll just get out there and long jump. Yeah, cool, sounds good." And just goes and fucking blitzes down the runway and jumps, 27 feet and doesn't know why, doesn't care why. He's just there to get a medal and move on with his day. And then goes out and parties and like, tries to date 14 girls at a time. Like he literally doesn't give a shit and doesn't think about it outside of track at all, probably, or a lot less than other guys, and definitely doesn't study it or care to study it. He couldn't tell you what his max velocity is. He couldn't tell you what his vertical is. He's just like, I'd ask him, "Do you think you can dunk?" "I don't know." "What's your max power clean?" "I don't know." Like they just don't care. Those guys are going to respond to cues like run faster, push harder. They don't care why. They just want to know what's going to get them to the outcome that they care about. So it's just, yeah, different strokes for different folks. But yeah, typically that's the relationship I've seen. A lot of volleyball players demonstrate poor eccentric capacities and approaches and oftentimes decelerate and blow through it. Eccentric, I think that's because they run really slow and they're always timing up a volleyball. The better the player, the better they can anticipate the set, the more momentum they can bring into it, the better their eccentric qualities will be. Eccentric over, and also jumping 2 foot is way less eccentrically dominant than like 1 foot or sprinting or track. Even 1 foot dunking is way more eccentrically dominant, and that's still way less than track. Eccentric overloads are often too intense since volleyball barely trained to start with. How do you train to target this weakness? Um, that's a really good question. You got to start with strength work and progress to that. So you don't want to start with the really advanced stuff because that's going to probably make them worse. It's going to limit their genetic potential and it's going to lower their ceiling as an athlete. You want to progress up the rungs because they're going to see the most amount of improvement by doing the stuff that's really easy first before getting into the really advanced stuff. The really advanced stuff doesn't work for guys unless they're really advanced. Otherwise, they're either going to get hurt, they're going to get too sore to really see much of an adaptation, or it's just not going to move the needle at all. The other thing with the really advanced stuff, like doing accentuated eccentrics or maximal isos, is that it oftentimes can have very long standing periods of like hibernation before you start to see that adaptation actually do anything, right? And so it's very confusing and misleading when you're doing something that's seemingly specific but doesn't lead to immediate performance improvements because there is like a major time delay in fatigue when you're doing something as intense as accentuated eccentrics or even to some extent plyos for some guys. So I would say stick with the simple stuff first, progress that stuff. And that's why, the first question is, what do I do after THP? Dude, THP is like a 20-year progression. It's not like you did 6 months and you're good to go. Like this is designed for you to be, basically take you from being a loser to being Superman. It's going to take years to do that, but it can happen and it happens slowly. It's not just like a 6 month, you know, thing. You can progress little by little by little each year if you're smart and you're dedicated. Just most people don't have the time to do that. All right, I think we're going to move to technique these last 15 minutes. Posture, I'd want to see the back a little tighter here. You're a little bit, so see how you're kind of like yanking it off the floor. I want to see tension in this position before you start pushing with the legs. Okay. Here, you push the knees back pretty well, but they need to come back further. You can start to see right here that your upper back, or basically your torso, is starting to angulate, and that's happening because you're extending at your hip, right? So if you're looking at this joint right here, this is starting to angulate, and that is why your knees are kind of you're not in the right position. That's because you're standing up too soon. So keep your shoulders over the bar and push your knees back. Right here, when you go to jump, your knees don't get very far forward, right? This is all the more your double knee bend happens, right? So if you look at the knee right here, if you're not getting a lot of double knee bend, that's because you're not pushing your knees back further enough, far enough, and then you're not jumping hard enough. So when you go to jump, I want you to try to allow your knees to come forward in this phase right here. So push the knees back further. I want you to jump and allow your knees to move a bit forward there. And then let's see here. And then the bar is just floating out a little bit in front. You need to actively pull it close to your body. Isaiah doesn't like that cue, but I do. The catch is beautiful. Catch is perfect. Yeah, this is beautiful. The rest of the lift is good. You got the hard thing down. Now you just gotta, yeah, everything else is good. So I would tell you push the knees back further, and then when you go to jump, let, or actually, I'll give you maybe a slightly different cue. Push the knees back forward while keeping your torso angle the same. Okay, so it's gonna feel like a leg press. So right here, don't let your shoulders come up. Just keep pushing the knees back like a leg press, and then jump. That's what I would tell you. All right, Zay, you got the next one?
Yep. All right, Paco, let's look at your technique. So, watching it full speed, you can see a pretty big deceleration on your last two steps. And the reason that is happening is because you're planting the support leg of the penultimate way too far out in front of your center of mass. So anytime your center of mass is around here, anytime you place your foot in front of it, it's going to cause forces to go this way. It's Newton's third law. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So you're sending forces this way, and that's slowing you down. What you want to do is focus on planting this foot underneath your center of mass. All right. And just by doing that, you should be able to accelerate through. You're also mistiming your arms with the push on the penultimate. At this point of the approach, both arms should be in front of your body. And I want you to think about your right arm, actually both arms. I want you to think about both arms as being connected to your right leg. So as your right leg comes up, both arms should be coming up. As your right leg is going behind you, your arm should also be going behind you. Okay. And what I want you to do, you jump really similar to me, is just watch how I jump. Break down my jumps frame by frame and copy where I put my arms with and how I time it up with each step. I want you to copy that exactly. That's what I did when I was first learning to dunk with Kilgannon and Lee Peck. I literally just copied their approach frame by frame and did walkthroughs all day until it looked like their jumps. And then the second video that you sent, I believe it's a sprint. You want to look at this, John, actually?
Is it Paco or? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Paco.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, that's way better than last week, actually. You're starting to lean back as you're pushing out of the blocks. I would want to see it happen a little bit more. So, Zay, go to that first touchdown point. So, right there, what should happen if you're viewing this from the side is at touchdown, you want to see the same angle of your shin to your torso. That's how you know if you're in the right position. So as you hit the ground right there, the angle of that lower leg should be the exact same as the angle of your torso. Those have to be parallel if you were to extend them out. So right now I can tell you're too far leaned forward. Some guys get away with it, but I wouldn't encourage it. And then keep going here, just frame by frame, step by step. So same thing here. Again, your torso should be at the same position. Now, if you're gonna lean like that, some elite guys will, but their ass is up, their torso is not down. So they have like a semi arch and their posture is like perfectly angled. They don't round their upper back. All right, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. I can't see much here. Okay, go back, go back. All right, so you're not getting much extension off of this stride. So step three, you need to push through that right leg way harder. You're just trying to chop the legs. Think push, generate momentum by pushing. Don't generate momentum by trying to move your feet faster. It is a balance between those two things. Right now, you're just trying to chop your feet too quick. I want you to think about riding a bike. If you're riding a bike, you don't push barely on each pedal, right? You push all the way through the pedal, and then you push all the way through the other pedal, and you push all the way through the pedal, and then once you get moving, it's just like you're kind of rotating your feet freely almost and lightly pushing to get more speed. That's what acceleration and sprinting feels like. It's push, 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 tap, 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 tap. Right now, you're tapping way earlier than you need to be. You need to be generating momentum there. All right, that's good. We can focus on that first. And then upright, I would say you probably need to get slightly more of a knee drive. You're just trying to get your feet down too quick.
Oh,
Oh
very
shit.
good. Very, 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 very,
Look at
very good.
that.
So only thing I would try to work on, Eric, is being a little lower here on as you take your penultimate. You're really high up. Like this leg is basically completely straight. Like there's just a little bit of a knee bend. Compare how low I am here and here, right? I want the support leg of the penultimate at mid support, so we call this mid support. I want this to look like the back leg in a reverse lunge. So think about what the back leg looks like when you're floating the knee above the ground. So I want this knee to be a little like probably 6 inches lower than you are there. If you do that and keep everything else the same, you'll get a really good jump. It's just that position is hard to, you need to be strong to be good in that position. Oh, never mind. I did not see this right here. Didn't realize you were gonna jump for it. Pretty good. What I want you to do, so I don't know if you're using this to mark where you're starting from. I want you to place a marker for your penultimate step, and I would have taken your penultimate at this thing right here, whatever this is, and it would have, and then place another marker right here. So this one's for your support leg of the penultimate, this one's for your plant leg, and then start there and right there. Go straight up and down. And that should fix it. Aside from that, rhythm looked really good. We just need to extend that penultimate step out. Ooh, so we're getting I know you said you were feeling back pain, Harish. We need to fix this right here. All right. So I want a neutral spine, flat back at that point. If you don't have the mobility for it, I would start doing hamstring stretches with a flat back and then start pulling from a box instead of from the floor. And that should help you flatten that out. So we gotta remove that pause, Harish. And the bar is still, it's better than last week, but it's still doing an S. The bar path is still doing an S. So I want that bar to move a little bit straighter. What I would actually do is I don't think it's up by your shins. I would move this bar in. Yeah, I think it's like it's hard to tell from this angle, but I think the bar is in front of your toes, like pretty far in front of your toes. What I want you to do is when you set up for the bar, right? And you're looking down. I wonder if I could show my feet. Can you see my feet, John?
Yep.
So when I'm looking down at the bar, it should be in line with this part of my foot, with the middle of my foot. Right now, it looks like the bar is right here in front of your toes. I want the bar to start here. right? So when you're setting up, look down at your feet. The bar should be over your laces, basically. Like the back of your laces, not the front of the laces, the back of the laces of your shoes. And that should improve the bar path. I think it's starting way too far in front of you, and then you're just bringing it in as you pull versus just starting with it in. So change that. So pull from a higher either try to fix your back if you can't pull from a higher surface, which I actually would just because your back is hurting, and then start with the bar way closer to you. And it should also be touching your shins. So Francis, you're running super fast coming in, a lot of momentum, but then you were
Shit.
doing the issue, I forgot who it was that I was looking at, but you're planting in front of your center of mass, so you're braking slightly. So you're essentially wasting a lot of the speed that you built up. What I would do, I would run a little slower. Run a little slower here, plant underneath your center of mass, then try to accelerate as fast as you can. The effort should all be here. From here to here, that's where your effort should be and where you should accelerate a ton. I would describe as this part of the approach as feeling relaxed and fluid. I'm not trying to run super fast unless I'm going for like a distance dunk.
I just watched Isaac. I shared my screen on accident during that, but um, Isaac, you are jumping really high. You need to you're 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 kind of jumping into the plant. So your footwork is like perfect here, but you're jumping into the actual takeoff. So what I'd want to see you do is like you're getting a good push and everything else. It's just really, really slow. I don't even know how you're jumping off of that. You just have to be so fucking powerful. Like positionally, it looks pretty good. Yeah, you just got to be way faster, way, way, way faster. Start adding some momentum to that penultimate step. I tell people like feel the wind in your face, feel your body cover space more quickly. It should be a little bit more of an aggressive acceleration. This is the last one, guys. We'll do, and then we gotta get going here.
This is Sam John.
Oh, dude, runs like a deer. Um, keep going. Good, 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 bad. Okay, so step 3 and 4, you're overstriding. Start getting the feet down a little sooner. Step 1, perfect. Step 2, perfect. Step 3, you're stepped in a hole. See how you're dropping your knee and like overextending there? Dropping the knee, overextending, way overstriding. Right here is even worse. You're like really, now you're overstriding. See how your contacts are way out in front of your body right here? Like right there, you're like planning on your heel. So steps 1 and 2 are perfect. Steps 3, 4, and 5, you need to start getting underneath your hips. Okay, so start pushing directly under your hips backwards. Don't be overextending. Your foot should never land out by your nose. It should be landing directly under your pelvis. And then this same issue, right? You're way out in front of your body, leaning forward. You're running like a soccer player here. So see how your foot is contacting out by your nose? That's not what we want.
Yeah.
So I would say push for 2 strides, push for 2 or 3 strides. Actually, push for 4 or 5 strides, and I want you to get those each contact directly under your hip.
Something that might help Sam is hit on the ball of the foot instead of the heel or flat
Yeah,
footed.
the first two were good. The first two were on the ball of the foot, but after that, it started to get out in front of you a bit. You run like a soccer player. All right, guys, we're gonna get going here. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it was helpful, and we'll see you guys next week. Ciao.